Welcome back to the Chats and Recaps podcast with your host, Sammy.
And Mimi. We're glad you joined us today. So let's get into it.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
And don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you never miss an upload.
These are true stories from the HBO Docu-Series I'll Be Gone in the Dark. The following episode may contain graphic depictions of rape, violence, and sexual assault, which may not be suitable for all listeners. Listening discretion is advised.
If you or anyone you know is a victim of rape, sexual assault, or abuse, please reach out to your local police department or a crisis hotline for support.
Welcome back again to another podcast episode. Happy Friday. Today we are wrapping up on the recaps we've been doing on the series I'll Be Gone in the Dark that's been on HBO. And today's episode was Walk into the Light. So we're officially closing on the chapter of the series, and we are finally putting a name and a face to the Golden State Killer. Just to preface going into this episode, if I sound less or slightly less lackluster than usual, I am recovering from an ear infection, so I have this feeling like I'm on antibiotics right now. Thankfully today, I'm feeling good enough to record this podcast. So just in case I sound a little bit less lackluster than usual, that's why.
Well, glad that you're feeling better.
Thank you.
You're not welcome. No, I'm just kidding. You're welcome.
All right. So we go into this episode with a little bit, or probably about as much joy as you can get out of the situation that happened here. So the killer is in custody. After all this time has passed, he's finally caught. And up to this point, we're really talking about him like this kind of shadow person. We kind of had a vague description of who he was with no name, no face to put to it. And now in this episode, we finally put a name and a face to this monster. So going right into the episode, one of the first people that speaks here is someone who was actually formerly in a relationship with the Golden State Killer. Her name was Bonnie, and she described herself as a rule follower, as a straight A student, and she said she started dating a guy who was studying law enforcement. She described him as gregarious and outgoing, and she was with him close to a year when he proposed to her. She said that he told her they were going to be married, and that pretty much he lived his life as if rules weren't for him. He took her illegally hunting without a license, went illegal fishing, and apparently he enjoyed going into no trespassing territory with her at night. So she said that he really pushed her toward fear. And one of the final straws for her was that he took her on a bike. I don't know if it was a motorcycle or a regular bike.
It's a motorcycle.
A motorcycle. So he was on a motorcycle, and apparently, I guess he was being chased by a German shepherd. Then he slowed down, kicked the German shepherd in the neck, and then killed it. After that, he said that she was going to help him cheat on a test for college to help him pass. And obviously, she was not someone who liked to kind of push the rules or go outside of boundaries. So she didn't agree with it. She didn't want to help him. And he told her that because they're engaged, that she owed it to him. Yeah. And so as you can see, obviously, as the relationship was progressing, he was just kept adding more and more pressure on her until eventually she just gave him back the engagement ring and ended the relationship.
Good for her.
But obviously it was not over for him. So he decided to go to her house in the middle of the night, knocked on her window, and then held a gun to her through the window, told her get dressed and that they're going to go get married. So she ran to her father, and her father told her to hide into a closet until he came back for her. And she said that her father was out there with him for probably about 40 minutes. She never found out what happened or what went down between her father and him, but she never heard or spoke to him again.
She never seen or spoke to Joe again.
Correct.
Then they go to show Michelle's husband, Patan, and Larry Cropton looking at the computer when they announced they caught the ransacker and EAR rapist killer, Joseph James D'Angelo. They then play a playback of Michelle saying how she respects the detectives on how they work so hard trying to solve cases. They used when they were doing the live.
They were holding a conference.
That's it.
With where they were discussing. They were discussing the Golden State Killer, and when they were referring to him and all the things he was connected to, that he was known by multiple names over the years. One of the ones that they included was the Visalia Ransacker.
Yes.
So when they were watching them talk about this and they heard them say Visalia Ransacker, everybody was like, "Whoa. Did they just connect him to the Ransacker?" Which, if you've been following up to this point, remember that she was the first person, and as far as I know, one of the only people who connected the ransacker to be the same person as the Golden State Killer. So everybody was really like, whoa. At this point, it's really clear the impact that she made on the case.
Yeah, it's creepy how she connected all these things together. The profile that she set for him matched exactly everything that they were saying when they caught him.
Yeah.
It was creepy how she was so on it.
Yeah.
They then said they used discarded DNA to get the match, which means they went through his trash and got DNA from there. And that matched them and linked them to everything that Michelle pretty much said he was involved in.
Yes.
It's weird how she even depicted the area he was living in.
Right.
Wasn't that crazy?
I know.
Paul, who was like her sidekick, her confidant, he knew everything that she wrote. He knew how to get into her computers. As he was listening to everything, he went into her computer and started looking at all her notes. And she was like spot on. He was a veteran. He was the ransacker. He was this, he was that. He was in these areas. He was in that area. He seems to be the kind of person that would be living in this area.
Yeah.
And she also said when he gets caught, she never said if, she said when he gets caught, his job title will make every jaw drop. And she sure was right on that one.
She called it. And what's interesting is they were talking about, some of how a lot of this attention and everything and how it really blew up, bringing the positives of social media.
Yes.
In influencing the world today, which is interesting because it's like this double-edged sword. There's a lot of, negative things that come out of it, but at the same time, there's all these positives that would not be possible if social media wasn't existing today. Because back then, there was very little media that talked about the case, and pretty much what people knew about was only what the media discussed.
It was, what people knew back then was only what the media wanted.
Exactly.
Or
they
not
spoon-fed.
necessarily the media, because the media would have said whatever they wanted to say. But of course, it always comes down to the mayors and the city councils and everybody who's like, nope, we got to keep this hush hush. We can't make our neighborhood look bad. So they only can say what they're allowed to say.
There is also a certain aspect of it that is what the media chooses to cover as well, because they only, yes, politics and everything do play a part in it. But even today, the stories that the media chooses to share, and I know you hate talking about her, but for some reason, YouTube recommended to me a video about Casey Anthony.
Ugh.
I know you hate talking about her, but there was a point that they said in the video that was talking about like how there's 100,000 cases of children who go missing, who are abused, who are murdered by their parents and stuff like that. And how out of the 100,000 cases, only maybe 269 average a year that are actually talked about. And then it mentions how, they pretty much only choose the cases that are the most interesting.
High profile.
Not even, because what makes something high profile? It has to be interesting. And unfortunately, the more like gruesome or bad it sounds, the better for them to get people's attention to look at it.
Yeah. It's sad when they do that. Then they show one of the victims, Chris Pedretti. she was stating how she was disappointed that he was still alive, because she wished he was dead. In my opinion, I'm glad he was still alive.
Yeah.
Because I'd rather see him rotting in jail for the rest of his living life than to be dead, because that would be the easy part.
Right. He would never have to face.
It's too easy. He wouldn't have to face the humiliation. He would, well, even though, to me,
I don't know if he has a conscience to feel humiliated.
But to be put on the spot in his 70s.
Yeah.
So I just feel bad for his family, because when he was caught and they said he had 3 daughters and a granddaughter, to think he had daughters, and he's out there raping and killing these women.
Yeah.
And then to think that they were so proud of him, of who he was in their eyes, and turn around, he was the monster that was spoken of, the creep in the night. I could not even imagine how they feel.
Yeah, it's insane. It goes to show, again, you never really know a person.
No, you don't.
One of the signs, there was a portion where they showed some of the victims holding a sign that said, "Now we ... have the power and the control."
Yep, that's right.
And so I thought that was cool. Now, one thing that did kind of confuse me is the part where, when they were talking about all of the 50 plus women he was accused of murdering, raping, and then on top of that, he had 13 counts of kidnapping. I don't recall them discussing anything in kidnapping in the series or anything like that. So that part was kind of...
maybe it came out after he was caught.
Yeah, unexpected.
Maybe those were new things that were found out later on. Maybe his DNA linked to other cases that were kidnapping, but they didn't know at the time. It's possible. There was that one girl that was taken out of her home and dragged down that little creek thing, and then
so that counts as kidnapping.
Yeah, that would be kidnapping. I remember that one. That was in the show.
Maybe there were others that he removed from their homes and stuff as well that were counts of kidnapping.
Maybe. But I think there were like 2 from the book. I don't remember from the docu-series. I only remember from the book, because the book, where the book called "I'll Be Gone in the Dark," that has a lot more details and a lot more stories than the docu-series.
Right.
So, the book is I'm sorry, but the book is way better.
Yeah. You can only put so much into a film or a series.
Yeah.
But one of the things I really liked that one of the women said was, she went there and she saw him, and then she made a comment. She said, "Really, this pathetic old man was the monster who did all these things."
Yep.
And it's like, yes, he really is just a pathetic old man.
Well, think about it. He could have been a scrawny little thing. He could be this old man now. But back then, he had one power. And the power was that he entered these homes. He got familiar with the homes. He got familiar with everything. How to open their door, how to slide in, how to slide out, the times they went to sleep, the times they were at home, the times they were gone. He had that power. And when he came in the night, they didn't even have a chance to sit up.
Mm-hmm.
That's
crazy.
That's scary.
Insane.
That is so scary, because had he been a regular creeper coming in, he probably would have been caught a long time ago.
Yeah. But it was because of that.
To do all the things that he did. And I think the ransacking was just him getting used to going in and out of homes.
Yeah.
Learning. It was just his training.
Yeah,
to
remember,
me, that ransacking was just
like,
a training.
It completely lines up with the way that Bonnie described their relationship.
Yes.
He started with little things, and then he would start progressing and progressing and progressing.
That's what they all do.
And it's like he just kept raising the stakes. Oh, now it's just illegal fishing. After illegal fishing, now we're going to start trespassing on people's property. Mm-hmm. Next thing, we're going to try to cheat our way through college. It's like he kept trying to raise the stakes. And then after he lost Bonnie, then he was like, well, let me test the waters and see what else I can do. So then it turned into going into people's houses. And then once he got comfortable with that and he wasn't getting caught, then it was like, oh, now he feels comfortable enough to get in and out of the house and rape women. And then once he was getting away with that for a period of time and nothing was happening to him, he raised the stakes again and it became murder.
Yeah.
So it's like,
and then
I don't know.
When they show the house he was living in, like, really?
Yeah, everybody was pissed.
Like Fiona Williams, she was a victim. She spoke about her feelings when he got caught. She showed this article from the newspaper and she scribbled out his face because she just couldn't stand looking at him, even though finally there's a face to the monster. She then stated that she remembers crying when Elvis Presley died and then when the monster was caught. She says she just caught herself like uncontrollably crying because of, I guess, the emotion. She then couldn't believe how nice he was living. She's like, he was in this big old comfy, safe 3-car garage, nice home, and doing all this to all these women and living under their noses. That's like, who knows if he even went
not even
to
that far away.
Remember when they showed them doing a conference on,
he probably
that
was
town
there.
meeting? He was probably there.
That's what I said. I was like, he's probably there. It wouldn't surprise me.
Probably there.
It wouldn't surprise me if he kept tabs on every single thing that came out about him. I think he was a police
officer at that time.
I don't remember what year the conference was. They did a timeline kind of like his life when he got married to a woman named Sharon Huddle. Then they said 1973 he became a police officer. And when he became a police officer that year is when he started becoming the Visalia Ransacker.
Yep.
And then 1979, he was arrested for stealing dog repellent and was released from the police force. And said he never legally split from his wife and mentioned that his wife was a divorce lawyer and that he worked for like 24 years for some company and then retired in March 2018. And then the following month is when he was arrested.
Yep. Then they showed his nephew, Wes Ryland.
Oh, I'm sorry. He also had a military background.
Yes, he was a veteran, actually.
Yes,
he was the veteran.
He served in the military.
Which is something that Michelle also said. She said this guy had to be in the military. She said, I wouldn't put it past if he didn't serve in the Vietnam. Was it Vietnam? Yeah, Vietnam.
I don't know. Do you remember I don't know if it was the last episode, the episode before, where the first ever officer saw him face to face and was able to give a description, and he described him having like a military cut.
Yes. And the way he was standing, he said the way he stood was like military stand. And the only reason he knew that was because he was military as well. And he even said something like in the Air Force, maybe, which I think or the Navy, which I think that's where he served.
Yeah. So
they were pretty dead on.
So then they said something that made me ask the question, was he following Michelle's journey this whole time? Was he aware that she was writing this book that was coming out about him? Because it wouldn't surprise me. They mentioned something about like how he kind of knew what was coming, which indicated that maybe he was aware and or following these stories about him.
And the thing is, I think she was also aware too, which is why she wrote the letter.
Yeah, which is why she addressed a lot of things to him.
Yes.
I think she knew that he was
I think she knew he had a lot of ties, and
which is interesting because from the beginning, I always said I felt like he was following the news stories and stuff like that. I feel like he's one of those people who probably enjoyed going back and reading about him getting away with stuff.
Of course.
Probably showed up to the thing and just sat there smugly like, nobody here knows it's me.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank God for DNA and
probably drove
genealogy.
By their houses and stuff, said hi to them on the streets. Didn't think anything of it. But yeah. They go into someone named Wes Ryland, who was one of D'Angelo's nephews. Mm-hmm. And he made an interesting comment that his mother, when she was dying, said that his family is full of secrets and that everyone has a secret. Yep. So that made me wonder, did she know something?
I wonder. Her name was Constance. She told him how when they were little, they ate peas off the floor and was locked up in the closet. Then their father would then take them out of the closet, line them up, and give them corporal punishment. And Joe was the one who got it the worst.
Yeah. And when I was listening to that, I was like, still does not excuse anything that he did at all.
Because why didn't
because every other kid had a right
affected,
then to be the exact same way, and yet they were affected.
Not. I mean, even though he apparently got the most from, everything that happened to them when they were little. And then another thing was when he talked about how his mother said that when she was 7 years old, because they lived on military bases because their father was military.
Right.
And when she was 7 years old, she was raped by 2 military men who raped her in some hangar.
Mm-hmm.
And as they raped her, her brother Joe just watched, which that was very disturbing.
Yes.
Why would he sit there and just watch? I don't know. I mean, I don't know what would go in a person's mind.
Me neither.
And then maybe, who knows, maybe she knew what her brother was doing, but their family was so freaking corrupted, like so mentally corrupted, and had to be hiding a lot of things. They just knew how to hide things.
Well, who else says?
I mean, I think she knew.
I don't know. For one of the last things you want to say to talk about your family having a lot of secrets is kind of
disturbing.
I don't know. Then the next person they showed was Lisa Ortiz, who was his cousin. I didn't really care for most of what she said because she just described him as this like really kind, nice person or whatever. And then she read a letter that she wrote to him.
Yes. Well, the thing was, she was in a messed up family.
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually, he was her uncle. And
her
father...
It said cousin.
No, her father raped her. Her cousin... Her father raped her when she was little. Then when she was a teenager, somebody broke into their house, held them at knife point, raped her as well. And then she went to live with her Uncle Joe. She said how he was nice to her, how he was a great father, how he protected her, and she felt like he was her father figure that she never had. Then when he got arrested, she read a letter that she wrote about how brokenhearted she was to know that she had gone through rape and molestation from her dad.
Yeah,
how he had daughters, how he had a granddaughter, and yet he went out there and mistreated these women and did
who he really
everything
was.
that he did to these women, and just how brokenhearted she was. Like, she couldn't believe how Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde he was. It's like, I mean, those are my words, not hers. Because he was a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. To his family, he was this big old loving guy. He took care of them. He protected them. He did good things with them. And then at night, he was this monster.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It is crazy.
Then they talk about Wes, again, his nephew.
Yes.
How in his home one night, he was face to face with the guy in the ski mask, and how the guy in the ski mask, how he spoke through his teeth, told him, turn around and go back to bed and say nothing. And he always wanted to know who that guy in the ski mask was. And now he knows that he was face to face with the EAR serial rapist.
Yeah.
And then he started thinking, did my uncle use our home as like a safe haven place, somewhere to hide while he was doing these bad things?
Yeah.
Somewhere to run to when he did these bad things. So I was like, he was he was like, he looked out his window and his uncle was looking in, and he was just like, who is this man? And then the man was like, through his teeth, turn around, go back to bed. And then never spoke about it again.
That's insane. And after they go through those stories, they show a brief segment about CrimeCon, which I guess, I don't know if it changes every year, but the one that they were talking about, it took place in Nashville, Tennessee. And CrimeCon is like this big, giant true crime convention where people flock to. It says thousands of people go to these events, and they're all people that are just fascinated with true crime and all that stuff. And Michelle made a statement wondering, like, how can people be so fascinated with true crime? And I said, I kind of wonder the same thing. Because after covering this series, and then we did another series on Jeffrey Epstein as well, we were covering it, and those are only 2 series that we went to, not to talk about people, right? Not to talk about people who do like true crime podcasts and that, or stuff like that, and that's literally all they talk about is just true crime, and they're constantly discussing these things. It makes you wonder, like, because even doing these 2, I feel like it's so dark that I just kind of want to get out of the darkness.
Yeah, I thought this was something that I could have gotten into as well. But after we did those 2 and this one, to me, that's pretty much it. It was too dark.
It is really dark.
And I know it's true life. And I know, because as I was growing up, I was also fascinated with a lot of these true crimes and detective stories and movies and murder mysteries, and I was always fascinated by it. But at the same time, all of those movies and books and everything that I read, I took it as showing me how to protect myself. And I know sometimes you can't protect yourself 100% of the time, but if you make it harder for them to get to you, they're just gonna move on to the next easy target. So those books and everything, it could have turned into a passion going to those places. What did you say they were? CrimeCon. It could have turned into that, but I mean, I still get fascinated, and sometimes I still watch docuseries, but for some reason these 2 just hit me.
I wonder if it's so much a fascination. I don't know if fascination is the right word. I'm not fascinated. I'm more disturbed, more disgusted, more it makes me want to bring justice to people, makes you more want to put names and faces to these unknown people that do these things than I am, like, quote unquote fascinated by it. And someone made a comment, I believe it was one of the girls who does a true crime podcast, and she said it's like, quote, a fantasy of your own fears, end quote, in regard to the true crime fanatics. So I'm like, I don't understand that. A fantasy of your own fears. Because they're like, you look at it and then it does this thing in your brain where you kind of figure out, could this happen to me? Could this not happen to me? Do you identify the story as a threat or not a threat? And then do you, like, something that happens, I guess, in your brain, in your psyche?
I don't know. To me, when I look at the things, I'm just thinking of, okay, so that's how he did that. So I got to make sure. I got to make sure that, hey, my windows are like this, or hey, this is like that, or hey, this is because this is how he did it. So I need to make sure he's not going to do it to me, because I'm going to double check everything. I'm just going to make it so hard for you to get to me that you're not even going to want to get to me unless you're that obsessed.
I think that's what they mean by fantasy of own fears. Not like it's literally a fantasy, but it's like, you know, everybody has the things they're afraid of in the back of their mind. And so you watch these things that kind of scare you in a way, but then you also take in the information as like a how to protect yourself type situation. So I think that's kind of a little bit more, but it means not really like it's a fantasy, but it's like your brain has these like fears, like, oh God, what if somebody breaks into my house? Or, you know, what if I'm walking down the street and something happens to me, or I get out of my car, or this and that and the other. And so you end up getting so like caught up in these true crime things, because now you're putting reality to these fears that you have. And then it makes you like think in your brain, or what can I do different, or how does this affect me, or will this affect me, and stuff like that.
See, I never lived like, man, that would never happen to me. I never lived that way. I always said, ooh, that could have been me. That's the world that I lived in. That could have been me, or that could have been my sibling. Or I never said, that's not going to be me. That'll never be me, because you don't know. You don't know. So when I walk down the street, I make sure to look at everybody's faces. I know it's weird, But I made sure to look at everybody's faces, say hi to people, because they think about it twice if you look at them. Because sometimes if they're going to kidnap you, they don't want you looking in their face. That's number one. When you stare a person down, they kind of get a little intimidated. I'm not afraid to look at somebody in their eyes and look at them and face them down. I'm not afraid of that. I always walked with my head up high, and I always looked at my surroundings. Always. I always walked ready to attack if I needed to.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people say, well, you shouldn't be living that way. Well, unfortunately, we live in the world that you have to think that way.
I was going to say, unfortunately,
have to be ahead of them.
Because of people out there.
Yep. Because of monsters like this. And you know, a fantasy I always had was, I wish we can go back in time and live in those times. But when I started reading this, the book and everything, and all the rape crimes that happened back then, way more than now, because how easy it was to enter people's homes.
I don't even know if it's more than now. It's probably the same.
I think it's more now because women are more aware of their surroundings and they protect themselves a lot better.
Look at like statistics and stuff, and look at things like the Me Too movement and things like that, and you realize it's a lot more than what you think it is. And it's because, again, still to today, a majority of these cases are not ever reported, never go to court, never file police reports. True. They only come out and talk about it like years and stuff later when they feel more comfortable. And it still happens today, and still people it happens to today who don't talk about it. So we can never have like a real true statistic. Well,
no, not on statistics, but women are more aware now than they were back then. Back in the old days, you respected other people. That's how it was. You were scared to disrespect other people, and whatever they told you to do, you did it.
Yeah.
Where now, you know, people stand up more. And yeah, there's still that majority, or still that, not majority, I'm sorry. There's still that percentage that, you know, bad things still happen to them. But those random rapings doesn't happen as much and as far out as it did back then, because now there's DNA, now there's this, now there's that. So they catch people a lot quicker now than they did back then.
You can only hope.
Thank God for DNA testing.
I know. After the CrimeCon talk, they went a little bit back into her book, and a lot of the people who were present for her book signing and when her book was released and all of that, and all the support that it got. What was interesting is she did give pseudonyms to everybody in the book, which I wasn't aware of because their names were being discussed in the documentary. Apparently in the book, every victim or survivor has a number that she uses to refer to them by in the book. And at this point, it was very clear that she was making a difference in a lot of people's lives, and how she made such an impact, especially on the survivors, giving them voices, helping them build this community of support and everything. And then Patton Oswalt, her husband, said something that I was like, I say this all the time. And he said that what he did to these women, they could have all turned into monsters just like him, and yet they didn't.
Yep.
And I always say this is why we cannot use trauma as an excuse for people to do things like this.
I know. One of those women
could have
easily turned around and been a serial killer on all these men.
And yet they didn't.
They lived their lives. They moved on, and they lived their lives. Even though they moved on, they still couldn't get rid of them, but they moved on and they lived their life. So I like when Patton said that the victims, the way they lived their lives was a big fuck you to D'Angelo.
Yes, it was.
They didn't do horrible things. They moved on. They lived on. They had families. They got married. They lived their life. And he was just like, you know, fuck you, D'Angelo. That's just a big old fuck you.
Yeah.
So I thought, I mean, when he said that, all my hairs just stood up. Like, yeah,
Right.
that is so true.
Yeah, when he made that statement, I was just like, oh my gosh,
I
I
know.
say this all the time. Do I not say
Yeah.
this all the time?
Yeah.
Just because bad things happen to you does not give you an excuse
Doesn't.
to try to put that onto other people.
No.
There's so many people out there who have had unspeakably terrible things happen to them, and yet they're still good people who don't hurt other people, who use the traumas that they experienced to help
be a better
other
person.
people, to build support systems for other people, who make positive impacts.
To try to stop it from happening over and over again. You know, they take their misery and bad things that happen to them and they turn it into a positive thing to help other people, not to destroy other people.
Yeah. And then after the big F you to him, I said, yes, let him rot in prison. So in the end, we're going to talk about like what happened with the Golden State Killer and stuff, and like what he faced in prison and all that. And after the statement and the sentiment by Patton, they show all the survivors how they had a get together, and they were all just like talking, having heart to hearts, and just being a support system for each other, sharing their stories and everything, and just kind of being together and being there for each other during this time. Because as a lot of them said, they were experiencing a lot of emotions during this time. You know, a lot of it was, you know, happiness that he's finally getting caught, that he's finally in prison, that he's finally going to face things for his charges. But at the same time, for the people who kind of moved on, it brought back, you know, those memories and still feelings of how they felt when the event happened. So there was a lot of emotions and everything they were going through. Yep. And one of the survivors was giving a speech to everybody who was there. Yes. And one of my favorite parts of what she said was, he has a name, and his name is Inmate D'Angelo.
Yep.
And I said, and I gave a little clap with her.
Yes.
And after that, one of the survival couples, Gay and Bob, was it?
I thought it was Patricia.
There's a couple, I believe it was Gay and Bob. Yeah, Gay and Bob. They were the couple that was still together. Every time that they talked to her, they also talked to her husband. When they were walking away, the husband was saying to her, "Oh, we're the only survival couple that stood together."
Yes.
And then one of the survivors said after that, which I believe it was it Gay who said it? She said that he's going to prison and she's going to Paris.
Oh,
and that's a good thing.
Yes.
I said, that's a great
her
thing.
And her husband went to Paris. And that, she said they were planning it for a long time, but when they finally did, he was caught. So they're like, he's going to jail and we're going to Paris.
Right. I was thinking, what a beautiful moment. They're getting their closure. He's finally being put away, and they're going and moving on with their lives and letting him just rot in prison, where he can get to sit there and think about why he's there every day. And I hope that he lives at least 25 years more so that he can suffer and sit in there and be forced with his thoughts to think about all the stuff that he did. And my only other wish is that they would be able to show him all of the survivors living wonderful, happy lives and traveling the world and being happy and all the stuff they're doing, so that he can just be there and be miserable. Yeah. That would be one of my hopes. But obviously they're not going to show him that. But if I had a secret wish, it would be that.
Yeah. Then they show Linda Odell, and she says how her youngest son did not want her to do the show because he feared something bad would happen to his family. Then she wrote to him saying that she's been hiding it for way too many years and she needs to speak out. Her son then told her he loves her and he's proud of her. So, you know, like they said, you can move on, but it doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. Mm-mm. I also like the lady who did the speech, which was the year after D'Angelo was caught. And she said, "We're not survivor sisters. We're survivor family." That was pretty cool, because they've got this strong bond with them, and they're still doing support for all the families that were affected by this man, or this. He's not even a man. He's a monster. He's a monster wearing a human body's skin. And they show that no matter what, they can't be broken.
That's true.
And then, you know, you look at them and their gatherings and it would have been so nice because I know Michelle would have been at every one of these gatherings. And I know she would have been so happy and proud.
I know
that he was finally caught. I was just thinking, like, when they was doing the arraignment, I know she would have been there.
Yes,
she would absolutely have been there just to stare him in the face and say, I got you.
Of course she would have.
Got you. Because she did. She got him. I wish she was still here because I'm sure after that she would have moved on to the next unsolved case.
Probably. I'm sure she would have.
So I hope there's more Michelles out there because there's a lot of cases out there that need help.
Yeah. I think this was a quote that was from Michelle that she said, murderers lose their power the moment that we know them. So that was another quote that I really loved that she said. And then at the very end, Patton makes a statement saying, even if you're married to a person, you don't really know the full person. And that there are things that he didn't know about her.
That's true. He said the same thing. There was a lot of things I didn't know about my wife, Michelle. Yeah. So there's going to be a lot of things that he's not going to know how to answer his daughter when she starts asking more questions, because you can be with somebody all your life and still not know them. Because it's my mom had a saying, you only know a person when they're right there with you, but once they walk away or they walk out that door, you don't know who that person is. Because once they walk out that door, they're somebody else. And it's true. It's true.
I don't know. I'm the same person here that I am when I go out.
But what I'm saying is, like, well, I don't know what you like or what you don't like, or because when you go out and you're doing stuff, because sometimes you're like, oh, I went there, and I'm like, really? I would have never thought of you going there. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
I guess.
So you never know the person when they walk out the door unless you're with them.
I mean, unless you're a mind reader.
Yeah.
You don't know what they think.
You don't know. You don't know.
That's true.
You don't know.
So the end of the docu-series, it ends with a whole bunch of different shots showing them removing all of her items, packing up her desk and putting everything away and removing it from the home. So that was kind of like the wrap up to the series, was them putting everything away because at this point the case has been solved. The killer is behind bars, and now the survivors have this, survival family all together. So that really was like the little bow on the end of the book, and her book was published at this point. So at the very end of the series, there are two statements that they posted at the end of the docuseries, and then one additional information that I want to provide. So on June 29th, 2020, Joseph pled guilty to 26 charges, including 13 counts of first-degree murder and 13 counts of kidnapping. He also admitted to all East Area rapist attacks, including those of Chris, Linda, Fiona, and Gay and Bob. Under his plea deal with prosecutors, D'Angelo will serve life in prison without the possibility of parole in lieu of the death penalty. As part of the deal, D'Angelo is also required to admit to dozens of uncharged crimes. And that was the end of that case. Yeah, that was the end of the docuseries. That is the end resolvement. Thankfully, this one had a
positive ending.
The best ending that you can get from a situation like this, which is, the killer facing justice, being behind bars, putting a face and a name to this person so that they can be shamed and humiliated for the rest of their time. And then at the end of this, to wrap this up, because it was very powerful when she wrote it, and it's even more powerful now that he's actually in prison. Mimi would like to read directly from her book called I'll Be Gone in the Dark, which if you want to read it, you can purchase it. I think you purchased it on Amazon.
Yeah, I purchased it on Amazon.
And so if you want to get more information, or you want to hear even more that was not directly covered in the series, the book gives a lot more depth and a lot more information and a lot more about the survivors. So if you're interested after this and you want to learn more, you can definitely get the book and read the book. And she's now going to share what was called Letter to an Old Man, which was written by Michelle.
Yes.
Before the Golden State Killer was actually caught. And this is just an abridged version. This is not the full letter.
I've seen photos of the waffle stomper boot impressions you left in the dirt beneath a teenage girl's bedroom on July 17, 1976 in Carmichael, a crude relic from a time when voyeurs had no choice but to physically plant themselves in front of windows. You excelled at the stealth sidle, but your heyday prowess has no value anymore. Your skill set has been phased out. The tables have been turned. Virtual windows are opening all around you. You, the master watcher, are an aging, lumbering target in their crosshairs. A ski mask won't help you now. One victim's phone rang 24 years after her rape. "You want to play?" a man whispered. It was you. She was certain. You played nostalgic like an arthritic former football star running game tape on a VCR. Remember when we played? I imagine you dialing her number, alone, in a small dark room, sitting on the edge of your twin bed, the only weapon left in your arsenal, the firing up of a memory, the ability to trigger terror with your voice. One day soon, you'll hear footsteps coming up your front walk, like they did for Edward Wayne Edwards 29 years after he killed Timothy Hack and Kelly Drew in Sullivan, Wisconsin. Like they did for Kenneth Lee Hicks 30 years after he killed Lori Billingsley in Aloha, Oregon. The doorbell rings. No side gates are left open. You're long past leaping over a fence. Take one of your hyper-gulping breaths. Clench your teeth. Inch timidly toward the insistent bell. This is how it ends for you. You'll be silent forever, and I'll be gone in the dark, you threatened a victim once. Open the door. Show us your face. Walk into the light. Michelle McNamara.
Yeah, so that was a very powerful letter that she wrote.
Yes.
And so
it's a longer letter.
Yeah, it's a lot longer than that.
Yes.
But we just did like a little abridged version. So thank you again for listening to us. This officially ends this series of I'll Be Gone in the Dark.
Yes.
It may not be the last true crime thing we ever cover, but it will probably be the last thing we cover for a while. I don't know. Maybe we can talk about like current things.
Maybe.
To put out current stories out there that are in need to be solved, or just to draw light to things, to put it out there in the public.
Yes.
But thank you for joining us on this journey. We hope that you maybe learned something, or maybe that listening to this makes you feel inspired to want to help some unsolved cases out there.
I also want to say something. First off, I'm glad that Patan did the series about his wife and everything that she did for trying to catch this killer who's been at large for almost 40 years.
Yeah.
I give him a lot of respect and a lot of gratitude for sharing it with the world. I give a lot of respect to Michelle. May she rest in peace. May there be more Michelles out there. And I hope that the docuseries encourages other people to be like Michelle. And I don't know. I just hope that her family will move on from this, which I know they have. And her daughter will probably be a future Michelle. Who knows?
Who knows? It could happen.
So, bless the family, bless everyone, bless all the victims. And I'm just glad this was a happy ending. I really am. Because I felt a weight lifted when he was caught. I was like,
I know.
I could only imagine how they felt. I just felt like the weight was lifted off this whole thing. I don't know. I didn't think it was going to hit me that much, but it did.
Yeah.
So thank you all.
Yep. And I feel like that was a good way to end the podcast. So thank you for listening. We hope that you are staying safe, happy, and healthy, and that you manifest everything that you desire out of life.
Amen.